Hello everyone, I hope you're all having a good day and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be giving you guys some tips for building diagonal houses in Minecraft. Most of you might mainly build just the regular straight houses in Minecraft, and the same goes for me. But when you're building a town, city, or maybe simply want to spice up your builds, then building a diagonal house might fit in nicely. If you end up enjoying the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribe if you haven't already. So what I have here are a couple of houses, all practically with the same design. However, the house on the right is built in the regular way, like the straight way, and the other two houses are built diagonally. The reason I did this is because if you want to build a diagonal house and do not know exactly how to do it, and what design, etc., having a template of sorts to refer to when building diagonally can be really helpful. Now, another thing that you might notice is that the middle house looks much bigger than the one on the right. Even though the design is quite frankly the same. It has 3 windows just like the straight house, but it's much bigger in appearance. That's because if you take a square and measure the sides of it and measure the diagonal distance as well, you will always find that the diagonal length of the square is the largest. And that explains why the middle house here, which is practically built with the same amount of blocks, appears to be using more space. Make sure to keep this in mind if you plan to build a diagonal house or multiple of them in a city or town. You might want to decrease the size of the design compared to a normal house. We, however, are just going to build the bigger diagonal house. Now, the layout is quite important. Make sure to get it right. I always place some extra blocks to point out some of the key supports of the building. It can look quite messy at first, but I promise you it will make sense in a second. I'll also be taking a look at the original building from time to time, just so I get the design right. Now, there's something else that is very important to watch out for when building a diagonal house, and that mainly involves the blocks that change form when they are connected to other blocks. And then I'm talking about fences, glass panes and iron bars, for example. Once you connect them to similar blocks of their own type, or connect them to solid blocks, they will extend themselves so they can connect to that other block. Now, when building straight, like just in straight lines, it is quite easily to get those different types of blocks to connect to one another. But when building diagonally, you do not have those connections. Like you can see over here, I have been using these blocks to build the window section, but it has holes all over it and doesn't even look close to an original window section, for example when you compare it to the original building. And this can be fixed in 2 main ways. Either you choose to only build with solid blocks, and that's a fine choice, but it will not look as good in the end. The other choice is to extend the build on the inside, like I'm doing over here. I'm creating a way for these blocks to connect to one another and to solid blocks, so this window will actually be fully integrated into the rest of the build. You got to place some extra blocks on the inside of the frame of the building to make it look best. And for the door, well, I chose to keep it open since this is more of a shop design, but if you want to close this up, you got to use 2 doors instead of 1. When you keep all these things in mind, most of the build is quite easily doable. You still build a frame of the house. The only different thing is how you fill it up and how you apply detail. And even the detailed part is not that different from the regular build. On the second floor it's the same story as before. You got to extend it on the inside if you want to get the windows the same. You can also replace the fence that I have used for example another glass block, then you can use a full glass block. And some parts of the original house had closed walls that were made using stairs. Well, you can't do that in a diagonal build, not when you only have 1 block of width to spare. For that I also think you have 2 options. Either you turn that section into another window section, since we have discussed that already, you can just apply that same method. But you can also choose to use full blocks there. And when using solid blocks, you get the same thing as I said before. You get the chance that it looks too simple and not detailed enough. So when you use those full solid blocks on a part of the wall, try to make it look more detailed, or take a color or type of block that has already a lot of detail inside of it. Now for the remaining part of the main body of the house, you just apply the same method as before. For the roof section you got to extend the top of the build a little, and the sides from where the roof begins need to extend further than the other sides. Sounds weird, but it's just like I'm doing here. Now, I always choose to start with the edges of the roof. If that is done right, you can easily fill up the rest of the roof. I'm creating a steeper edge by beginning with just the stairs and later on adding solid blocks between them, and that adds more detail to the build. Now the original building had deep slate parts integrated into the roof to give it a more reinforced look. In this building, those deep slate parts are still visible but a lot less frequent. But in my opinion it doesn't hurt the quality of the building. You can always choose to adjust it to make it more visible, but that is up to you. And after you got that part right, it's just a matter of filling up the rest of the build and repeating the same process. If you look closely, you can see that the outermost parts of the roof are different than the center, and I have done this with the purpose of creating a visible edge, and in turn that creates more detail. Now the roof is done, you can call it a day or choose to continue a bit further, since this roof is a bit thicker on the edges than the original building. You can see it with the other diagonal buildings that I made. They still have those thick edges, but I think we can change that up a little bit. So you can choose to extend the roof a little further, but to make it look good you got to remove the blocks that are in between them, like I'm doing over here, so it creates a bit of a, well, extended feeling. And once that's done, well, congratulations, you got the exterior of your diagonal house. I won't be going over the interior, since I'm probably going to make a separate video talking about interior design altogether. And that basically brings us to the end of this tutorial. Of course, this is only one design, but once you master one, you can more easily move on to another design. And in the end, practice makes perfect. Well, I hope this tutorial was helpful. If it was, please consider leaving a like and maybe even consider subscribing if you haven't already. I have a lot of cool things planned and I will be communicating with you guys about that in the near future. Stay tuned for that. For now, I wish you all a wonderful day and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.